Bang! Right on time. All right. It is streaming time. Hopefully everybody got the notifications and we have some people pop in. We shall see. We shall see. Let's just pop out the chat. There we go. Hey, Moonring. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Time for morning coffee. So today we're going to be talking about all things cosmic, really, and we're going to be talking about I'm good, thank you. How are you? Resistance is futile. So we're going to be talking about integrating Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons again, kind of. Hey there, Tie-Dye Draconomicon. How's it going? So the thing that we were talking about on Discord server chat was particularly good the other day. I was playing some Magic the Gathering and chatting with peeps. Hey, Brian. Hey, Ian. And we were talking about what's the difference between Magic in Pharyn and Dungeons and Dragons in general, and how Magic works with mana in the Magic the Gathering multiverse. Bree is good. She's currently playing outside because it's a nice fine day this morning, and I always let her out in the morning so she can go and terrorize things and have fights with other cats, because that's what she likes to do. It's more like the cats like to wander across our property from one place to another, and Bree just happens to be not too happy about that. So if you hear a row out the side of my door, it'll be two cats having a fight in my house. All right, so Athos is the example that I gave for how Magic the Gathering mana streams are actually the default for the entirety of D&D. Always resist, never give up, never surrender. I like it. Hey, Stephen. It's good. I'm cleaning my new house to get ready for move-in. Someone busted open the back door with a rock, but I just replaced it and finished cleaning it up. Crikey. Good morning, Adrianeth. Good morning, Greenscythe. Hey, Voices from the Dark. Hey, Amos. Hey, Michael. Return to Oz with your 3-year-old. Good choice. Tia Lisa, how's it going? Damien, happy Sunflower. John Calder, nice to see you too. JBJ, Sir from the Blackwater, how's it going? Oh, you enjoyed the video on Elysium? Good. Yeah, I enjoyed making that one. Gadzooks. Just a reminder to everybody, this is a super chat. I've got a smaller super chat sign, just a nice little subtle hint in the background there, to sponsor my coffee and books. Terrible addiction to both. Hey, Faith. Jay Fundersol. Yeah, Bree guards the gate, it's true. Hey, Moonders. How's it going? Okay, so the topic came up of, like, how does mana in Magic the Gathering differ from Magic in D&D? And the great assumption that everybody makes is that the weave is universal. It's not. The weave is specific to Pharyn and to the gods that govern Pharyn's existence and stuff. And the gods are really the key element to how mana in Magic the Gathering differs from Magic in the D&D multiverse. And also the planeswalkers and stuff in Magic the Gathering now currently are way reduced in power to what they used to be, thanks to an event called the Mending, which happened sort of after Nicobolus had his invasion of Dominaria, and he was trying to steal sparks from everybody, because he was trying to basically fix the multiverse in a way. It's a live stream, that's true. Sliding glass door, oh yeah. What is your opinion on a setting where Magic has a chance of mutating its user? It's nice Magic changes the world around you. It makes sense. It can morph the user too. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about that. So in the Magic the Gathering multiverse, mana is the flow of feng shui. It's the flow of energy that is kind of like how the domains of gods work. So mana will cover specific domains of reality. So you've got mana for mountains as dealing with like rage and fire and volcanoes and geothermal events and fire and lightning and dragons and, that sort of thing. It's like energy. And those elements are all present in the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. And the example of a world where there are no gods and there is no weave is Athos, the Dark Sun setting. And also, for a time, Dragonlance, where there were no gods, the gods withdrew from Dragonlance, and magic withdrew from Dragonlance as well. So magic users using their traditional methods of using magic, it just didn't work. Now, this is the key to how gods come into how magic works. See, gods exist in the beyond the transitive planes into the realms of the outer planes. And the outer planes are realms of belief and concept. Right? So they are the place where what you imagine as a mortal being becomes real in those places. And a lot of those outer planes are what is called divinely morphic or quite morphic. And even the plane of limbo is morphic just through normal creatures with their sense of will can change the environment around them just by willing it to change. So here's the key, right? In the normal world, when you don't have access to those transitive planes and the outer planes and that morphic quality where what you imagine becomes real, you don't have magic access like you can't just conjure things out of nowhere. And I'm going to try and put this succinctly. The gods are pivotal to being able to do that without disrupting and damaging the mana flows of the natural world. So the weave protects the normal mana flow of things, energy, natural energies, the feng shui, the ley lines and things like that of the natural world of Pharyn. It is protected by magic users using the weave and that weave is tied up completely with the god of magic. So it is a god that is controlling and is the faucet and control and stopgap measure that protects the world from magic users trying to change reality around them. So what they're doing is they're summoning essentially through the gods and through other powers, outer planar powers, the energy to change reality without using the energy of reality because that would mess it up terribly. And Athos is a perfect example of where a wizard basically figured out how to do that with the natural energies around them. Essentially, they became like a planeswalker and got access to like the mana of the sun and channeled that energy to do all sorts of horrible things, and it devastated the natural environment of that world twice. Because Athos used to be a lush and beautiful planet populated by halflings and with massive oceans and archipelago islands. Then they basically drained away most of the oceans, and I guess that was blue mana or something disrupted. So it changed everything. It changed reality. Hey, Moonhurst, thank you. Good to see your health and voice are doing well again. Yeah, thank you. I'm much more recovered. Thankfully, in time for my COVID jab soon, because I want to be in peak health so I can not get any side effects from that. Would Asmodeus team up with Grast? Probably not. No. Asmodeus is a Lord of the Nine Hells, not a Lord of the Abyss, and Grast is a demon, but possibly Asmodeus' son, but they don't really want that public knowledge. Cannibal halflings, yeah. They weren't originally cannibal halflings. Okay, so what happens when you take the gods away from a planet is essentially you lose access to the outer realms and the ability to morphically change the environment around you. So although wizards are separate from arcane magic, it's kind of like there's an understanding, there's an ability of them to use those outer planar energies in formulas, in ways that they know work every single time. Like it's a science, it's not a religion, it's not a faith that they're using, but they are borrowing those qualities. So you could get rid of all the clerics in the world and still use magic, but the gods are eventually going to go away if all the belief in those gods goes away, and then magic will disappear too. Or if it doesn't, the world is in serious jeopardy of being disrupted by wizards who are essentially tapping into mana. So they're tapping into the energy of the land itself. In Magic the Gathering, we've seen that those environments can regenerate that mana slowly but surely, but it's a limited resource. So if you cast a bunch of 9th level spells using mana, you're very quickly going to destroy reality around you. The world itself is going to be disrupted. Those fundamental flows of energy that hold everything together will, first you're going to see frogs and insects and stuff disappear, then forests are going to wilt and die, rivers are going to dry up, land is going to crack, and the geological table is going to become unstable, tectonic plates are going to shift and move. It's going to be absolute mayhem. The atmosphere will become poisoned and eventually dominant, like for instance Dominaria became completely disrupted because mana was flowing out of it through temporal gates. To get a really good overview of this, go on to my community chat and you'll see there's a link to a podcast where they talked about this. So the really good thing is that this means that mana is completely understandable and workable in a crossover between those two multiverses. So the Magic the Gathering multiverse operates almost exactly the same at a fundamental level, just with different wording and just slightly different takes on things as the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. So there's spheres, there's phlogiston, which is the ether. So the phlogiston is essentially the blind eternities of Magic the Gathering, kinda. So yeah, that's the way it goes. Now there's plenty of opportunity for wizards and things like that to tap into far realm energies, and that's where you get like the idea of magic as a chaos force. So far realm energies could possibly be used as some sort of substitute for using mana and things like that that's separate from gods and things, because it's weird, right? It breaks rules. That's like the defining factor. So you could sort of have something like that where the chaos of the far realm, the realms beyond, where physics and laws of reality are completely different. The multiverse, alternate dimensions where the laws of physics and things are radically different. That's the far realm for you. So it could be possible to tap into those without disrupting mana, without using the weave, and without using gods and things like that. And but the downside would be that you're at great personal risk of those alternate laws of physics changing you, so you become mutated. You split up into temporal versions of yourself. You become like, I don't know, an aquatic tentacled beastie thing. All sorts of possibilities. Thank you, Ricky. No Magic the Gathering in my D&D. This is what I'm saying, Ricky, that it's a mistaken belief that Magic the Gathering is conflicting with Dungeons and Dragons. It's not. It really isn't. It just uses different terminology because the two have been separate for quite some time. So archons and angels are different from those two places, but they're different from world to world as well in Dungeons and Dragons. A gnoll from Athos, or a gnoll from Eberron, or a gnoll from Ravenloft, or a gnoll from the Feywild, or a gnoll from the Shadowfell, they're all different types of gnolls, So it's no great shake-up of things to have elements from those different things crossing over. But it's entirely optional. You don't have to cross over anything. And you can homebrew whatever worlds you want. So you don't even have to play Pharyn with Magic the Gathering stuff in it. Plus, Pharyn is far more cosmologically cosmopolitan than people give it credit for. Like Hellerua, for instance, has still got spell-jamming vessels. It's got airships. Lantan has got gunpowder, potential to make machine gun-wielding shield golems. Thay has got interdimensional gateways to other places. There's the Emascari Empire has got sub-dimensions and sub-realms and demi-planes and things like that. It's possible to create a TARDIS and a sort of like Time Lords-esque situation with the Emascari. The Netherreal Empire has got batteries which powered non-magical items that essentially gave them magical powers. So kind of like magical Wi-Fi. So there's all sorts of possibilities that are just floating around, but for the most part, Dungeons & Dragons is entirely optional. It's just whatever you want it to be. It's just that those potential options are there for you to use. Yeah, the Warhammer universe is what I was talking about with the chaos stuff as well. Yeah. You don't care about conflict, you just don't like it. What exactly do you not like about it? That's the thing that gets me. Is it just a knee-jerk reaction to not wanting the card game stuff in your D&D? I mean, there's Theros, there's Wildmount, there's Ravenloft, there's Strixhaven coming out, there's all sorts of stuff which is crossing over. Ravnica. All I'm saying is that Magic the Gathering being integrated with Dungeons and Dragons doesn't impact anything other than your options. So it just gives you more tools in your arsenal. You don't have to use those tools. Hey, Moonring. Would Ixod's Architects be draining blue mana from the reef? Yeah, they would be. Blue and black, for sure. What would I put on an Elysium and random encounter table? I'd have, there's these creatures, there's all sorts of different creatures in Elysium. One of them that I haven't really talked about is the, not hippogriffs, what are they called? The kind of elephant celestial thingamajiggies. Hippofumps? I don't, something. But there's all sorts of, like, all the sort of normal creatures would be, there's celestial versions of them. So they have golden plumage and silver eyes and that sort of thing. They're celestial versions. I'm a medieval historian. I run a custom medieval world separate from most D&D nonsense. That's fine. Fine. Do you still have magic and stuff, or do you have monsters? Do you have, like, dragons and things in there, or is it basically just Game of Thrones minus dragons and undead? You weren't keen on Magic the Gathering because it's poorly written. Okay. Magic Gathering universe is so vast, there has to be something for everyone to like in one aspect or another. Yeah, true. Hollyphants, thank you, Ian. That's the one I was thinking of. Heffalumps and Woozles. Woozles, I think, was the original name that Jim Henson gave to Fraggles, technically. His original thing. Yeah, the Hollyphants. There's Hollyphants, there's angels, of course, there's archons, there's the visitors from the different neighboring planes. So there's adventurers from Isgard, there's satyrs, there's centaurs, dryads, nymphs, naiads, pixies, that sort of thing. A lot of the upper planes, particularly the good aligned upper planes, also cross over with the upper regions of the Feywild. Although the Feywild is kind of drifting more and more towards reality, the prime material plane, and further away from the celestial planes, it seems to me. Doozers, yeah. Doozer wizards is something I found out about. Yeah, the Eldrazi are weird, right? So the Eldrazi would be, they'd be at home in the, they'd be native to the phlogiston. But we know that there's other creatures which are native to the phlogiston as well, including stellar dragons. Stellar dragons would be able to cross over between different multiverses, I think, possibly. But there's kind of like that precedent where you have to travel through the far realms somehow in order to get from one multiverse to another. So you need to go through an area where all the laws of physics are completely broken. And at that point, you reach a point where all bets are off, you become a concept, and you transfer it over into the mind of a god in another realm. And then they imagine you into existence. So you kind of get conceptually teleported. And that's the only way you can do it. There's no physical way to travel intact from one multiverse to another. You have to become a dream of a god and then get imagined by that god into existence elsewhere. That's the precedent that we had for Tharizdun and the Oberth. So the Oberth were essentially Tharizdun's nightmare. Hey, Aaron Big. Be nice, Spike. So the Illithid's origin is very mysterious. It's probably lost with a reordering of the temporal state of reality. So the original state of the Illithids probably no longer exists. So they bootstrap themselves into their own existence of a time loop, and their original universe that they came from is no more, essentially. You could play it that way, but it's entirely optional as well. You could have it a campaign where you essentially try and go back in time or go to an alternate dimension, perhaps a plane of the far realm. That's all that's left of the memory of a past universe. And that's where the origin of the Mind Flayers is. And you have to go in there, travel back through time in the far realm, and stop the Illithids ever existing there, which possibly could have some sort of a change in reality as we know it. You might even wipe out the Githyanki and the Githzerai. Who knows? That's the problem. You can get rid of the Illithids, or maybe even the Aboleth, but you'd have to change reality as we know it. Perhaps you'd even align yourself with the Spellweavers. That's right, Stephen. So essentially, that shard of ultimate evil was the message that they in the bottle that they sent into the blind eternities between multiverses. And Tharizdun essentially, he saw it. He cast his mind beyond all reality. Because Tharizdun is a god of entropy, so he was kind of like contemplating nothingness. And in that nothingness, he found something. And that was the last dying oomph of all of the beings of that other multiverse. So it was kind of like a completely ruined Magic the Gathering multiverse that sent out a desperate call beyond the blind eternities, beyond the far realm, and it got picked up by a god of entropy in the D&D multiverse, and that was their doorway into. And then when that sort of got that kernel of a nightmare got picked up by Tharizdun, he had enough wherewithal to not put it into the celestial planes, where again the celestial planes allow anything you imagine to exist. That would have meant that all of the Oberith, all of the demons from the other realm would have been able to instantly manifest themselves as they were from that previous place. What he did instead was he plunged that into the base matter of the multiverse, so the elemental realm and the elemental energies, and they had to corrupt elemental energy to create demons instead. So that's what demons are in the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. They are corrupted elementals, kinda. You deployed the possessed gelatinous cube swarm. Thank you, Jeremy. I like it. How would a nation of hybrids between Lovecraft's Deep Ones and the kingdom of sea cliff-dwelling dwarf merchants be like? Both worship ancestor gods, albeit very different ones. Well, I mean, they'd probably get wiped out by other dwarves who would see them as an abomination, particularly Moradin, who does not like the corruption of his creations. So there's some element of dwarven faith. Call it racism, call it inherent bigotry, I don't know, but something about their belief changes the reality, therefore it manifests through their god, and their god then conceptually brings down this rule where they do not crossbreed with other things. So you very rarely get half-bred dwarves in Pharyn. Athos has half-bred dwarves because there's no dwarven gods that stop it. So it's possible for dwarves to crossbreed on different planets. So it's like the racism is built into dwarves. Or bigotry, I should say. There's nothing to update Moonhurst. Thank you for the donation on the Fraggle Rock settings so far. I haven't heard back from the Henson Company, but they're very busy filming the new Fraggle Rock series and a Fraggle Rock movie, I believe, which we'll probably see pop up next year somewhere. They'll start promoting it soon, I imagine. Besides from Flumps, what are some other good aberrations? Ooh, I can't think of a lot of them right now. Flumps would be a prime example for sure. Is Morrigan going to step in and get his beard torn off by Dagon? Yeah, pretty much go toe to toe with Dagon in that particular instance. The Sorchar, that's right. What are my thoughts on the theory that Palor is Zarius? Unfortunately, I don't know. I haven't looked into that. Hey, Dog Draws. Remember back when stream had tops 50 viewers? It's gone so far. You might miss the AJ, but I know I support you. You might miss this, AJ, but I know that I support you in your epic content, even though you might not see me in the chat that often. I appreciate it, Dog Draws. And I remember you. Speciesism? Yeah, that could be it. I was referring to what you're doing about the Fraggles. Well, so what I'm planning on doing with the Fraggles is researching and writing up a series of documents where I basically research the lore of Fraggle Rock and how it relates to the world of Thra and my grand unified theory of how it all connects to the Crystal of Truth and stuff, and how the interdimensional rifts between Fraggle Rock and other places work and what the origins of it are and stuff like that. And then I will do a series of videos on that where I explain stuff to people if they're interested. And coinciding with that, I will release like maps of Fraggle Rock and stats and things that you can use if you're planning on running campaigns that cross over into the Fraggle Rock and Thra connection. So that will be basically value-added stuff that people can purchase as PDFs on my Spring store, but it will also be available for Patreon and Subscribestar subscribers and YouTube channel members for free. Would a dwarf being changed by mind flayers hurt dwarven gods? Not really, because they become mind flayers. Hey Ruby, I'm good, thanks. What is the relationship between the inner planes and the elemental chaos? Well, the elemental chaos kind of was a 4th edition thing. You could say it incorporates all of the border areas between the different sort of... Some areas are dominated by one particular element, and there's bordering regions where they mix with the other elements as well. And that's all just sort of convenience. You could say that the elemental planes are infinite. They are vast. They have no limitations on their physical matter. That's where matter comes from in its purest forms. And yeah, so the elemental planes are all of the elements in different regions and different concentrations and things. So even in the elemental plane of air, although it's mostly just empty air, there are occasionally islands of rock or lakes of water or that sort of thing that is just flying around, plummeting or falling or floating. Yeah. How many magic cards do I have? Not as many as you'd think. I just play online. I don't really play physical Magic the Gathering anymore because I live out in the country, so I just don't get the opportunity. Could I do a video on the soul shard? Are they good? I think I had some info on the soul shard. I'll have a look into it. Fraggles don't breed in the conventional way, though. Well, you do see Fraggle children in the show, but whether they're like egg laying or something like that, I don't know. We'll have to find out. Yeah, that's right, Darth Matter. I'm working on a Fraggle Rock D&D conversion. Yep, I've got a grand unified theory that the world of Thra is the original origin of the Fraggles. The Fraggles are, in fact, a evolutionary offshoot in a demiplane of the Podlings, which makes sense when you think it makes a lot of sense. What do the Podlings do? They live in pods. They prefer to, kind of agoraphobic, kind of dumb, but they love singing and dancing, and that's Fraggles to a T. And they're also the right size. Oh, there's tons of dwarven gods, yeah. John, that's way off topic. Yeah, the Nagpar are definitely Skeksis analogues for sure. What's my favorite lore that I've read? Probably the Illithid lore, to be honest. I really like it. According to Robot Chicken, they reproduce in the normal way. Do they? I've never actually played Fallout, John. So I really don't know. Yeah, the doozers. Well, Jim Henson's original concept was that there were, because you've got the Gorg, which are the big sort of giant things that are naturally invisible, and they make a radish cream to make themselves visible. So they're quite weird. Then you've got downscale, you've got the Fraggles, and then downscale from the Fraggles, you've got the doozers, and there's actually, in Jim Henson's original concept, the doozers are also much larger, and they've got these tiny, weeny little micro other life forms that exist in Fraggle Rock as well, and down and down and down it goes. So there's this onion layer effect of ever increasing co-species that coexist within this demi-plane in a completely symbiotic fashion, which is just great. I love that idea. Yeah, dwarven gods will come down on dwarven vampires and lycanthropes like a mountain. Yeah, probably. They would definitely give their clerics means to deal with those sort of outbreaks, for sure. But we do have examples of dwarven vampires that are not just like instantly destroyed by the the dwarven pantheon. Hey Gadzeus, thank you. Hi, on a whim, I bought the old Advanced D&D DM's Guide with the red fella on the front and the player's handbook. Is it a fun edition? Yes. Yep, there's nothing wrong with it. You're still playing D&D. You'll find it very restrictive in certain aspects. The characteristic of Dungeons & Dragons evolution through the editions is more and more creative freedom on the part of DMs and players. So less rules restrictions for your storytelling. To the point where in 5th edition you have a lot more options for the culture, species, so your ancestry, your culture, your background, your character class, your less reliant on alignment and more on your goals, your bonds, your flaws of your character. So you've got a lot more variety in the character classes themselves. Even if everybody in the group is playing a fighter, you're not playing cookie cutters. Every single fighter can be a very, very different individual with different strengths and weaknesses. Their backgrounds play a huge part. There's their species, their culture, that sort of thing. So you can have a dwarf who was raised by goblins, that sort of thing. No, John's actually real. What about hybrids? Does Moradin just straight up murder communities of half-dwarfs? No, he just makes sure that they never happen. So he's like the dwarven birth control. Let's not forget the Thunder Blessing, which was directly tied in with dwarven reproduction. So Moradin has a direct hand in whether dwarves can have children or not. Has there ever been a case of a dwarf becoming a giant? Yeah, they're called Dweger. they can become giant. A vampire Thibble dwarf, that's right. There's also, wow, that's another example of a dwarven vampire. Gerald, that is hilarious. Snuffleupagus Tarrasque. That just blew my mind. Yeah, Fantasy Grounds is in many ways one of the best VTT software thingies that you can get. It's got a steep learning curve, everybody knows this, but it's got a lot of possibilities to it. How is my gummy bear lore? You came up with some gummy berry juice for D&D. Awesome. Imagine, if you will, fey bugbears. How's that different from gummy bears? Magic and mystery is part of their history. So is the secrets of gummy berry juice. The legend is growing. Moradin approves of half-dwarves, half-humans. No, we don't. If Moradin got his hands on Athos, Darksun, that would be very different. Trollsmedden, hello. Hello, Sweden. Hello, Dragon Ball Talk from New York. How's it going? Do dwarves who turn their back on Moradin become sterile? No. They simply do not have a choice. It is a strange thought, actually. Divine influence is why only certain races can reproduce with other races. It explains why humans can reproduce with anything because their god is dead. Yeah, so it's really quite an uncomfortable topic to think about, that the dwarven belief shapes their pantheon, and their belief is that they are pure and should not breed with other races, so their gods make it so that can't happen. Now, that's some next level bigotry when you think about it. That's dyed-in-the-wool bigotry. That's dwarven to a T when you think about it. And it's uncomfortable to think about, and it's uncomfortable to talk about, particularly in today's political climate, that dwarves, in effect, sterilize crossbreeds by belief. But, Dara's Dragon Spear as a counterpoint. Well, maybe there's some examples of different things. Was he from a novel? Or was he from an adventure? Spike. Miller Diamonds. That could not be further from the truth. Yeah, it's a great example of how races are different from species in D&D 5e and different from real world races. Yeah. I mean, race is just a term. It's kind of meaningless. There's no different species of humans. Even when there were like Neanderthals and things like that, we could still crossbreed. So they weren't even different species. They were just different ethnicities of human. From the core box set, Dragon Spear Castle. So it's a 5th edition thing? Well, colour me surprised that the people who wrote 5th edition do not understand the basic core concept of why dwarven crossbreeds can't happen, because it's politically a nightmare for them to approach. Tell me I'm wrong. 2nd edition. Shit! All right, you got me. I bow to your superior example, Spike. Damn it. Ed! Oh, you're breaking my heart. I'm wrong. It's true. I'm wrong. Thanks, Comic Nut. Hey, AJ, is the reason the gods can't touch Athos because of lack of worship, or is it the Sorcerer Kings as well? I don't know. I often think that it might be that Athos is far in the future and the gods are dead. I don't know. Does anybody know why there's no gods in Athos? What happened? Well, really, Ed was wrong. Wash your mouth. Yeah, so if half-dwarves exist, we know this. It's possible. So maybe occasionally there's a reason why the crossbreed could exist. Who knows? But they're just not a major thing on Pharyn. You don't encounter half-dwarves. Generally speaking. Drow are the least racist. Oh, good grief. We've gone down a horrible rabbit hole here, people. Good evening, Kenny. How's Scotland today? Same reason it's isolated from other planes. Yeah, it could be that it is temporarily isolated, like it is from like necessarily a different temporal time zone. Because it's kind of based on the dying Earth, right? The idea is that it's a dying planet. So it's Jack Vance's concept of like a dying Earth. What about a race of machine dragons from the Clockwork Horrors? You don't think the gods ever formed on Athos? Could be. Like, we've seen that the halflings, their pantheon is very nebulous. Like, they have basic concepts of their gods, but they differ quite a lot. Their names and stuff differ, and their methods of worship and stuff differ from village to village. So they're almost like legends more than they are a cohesive pantheon. Tamora is kind of locked into her who we imagine to be Tamora. All the definitions of Tamora are much more other races, whereas the halflings version of Tamora is much more different, nuanced, localized. So they have local religions. They don't have a grand pantheon that their entire race worships to. So they're almost the exact opposite to dwarves. It's a wonder to me, actually, that the halflings don't have lots of different languages, like the dwarven language and the elven language and things like that. Why aren't there lots of different dialects of elven, for instance? Their history is incredibly long, and they definitely split into different ethnic groups, even earlier in their history. So you should have Celestial Elven, you should have Eladrin, you should have Drow as a different language, you should have Gruglat, Wood Elves have a different language. The Moon and Silver Elves would have, the Star Elves and Sun Elves or Gold and Silver Elves would have different languages. That would make sense. But of course, different languages are kind of annoying in D&D. We do a lot to just sort of shove it under the rug and say, well, they all speak common. Common really is just a trade language when you think about it. It should be very limited. A cult of a trope is called the Atropals. That is terrible. Oh yeah, I saw that, Spike. Tasha may be a Leviathan. That's right. Tasha's cauldron of everything, may in fact be the goddess Leviathan. It's true. There's a link. Ooh. Athos is accessible via Planescape. There's a small section of Sigil with Athasians called New Tier. Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, Sigil should have portals to everywhere. That's kind of its shtick. Hey, Kairos. Yeah, too many language proficiencies. I know. It's way too many elves. We've got more drow now too. Thanks, Zytek. I'm very interested in the Mascari Empire, but there isn't much I can find about them. Is there an adventure or some resource that goes into some detail about them? Not really. Like the original creators of Forgotten Realms, I may be wrong, but they tend to leave it vague on purpose. So the Mascari Empire is just a bunch of mysterious ruins and things, and a plain of purple dust that used to be giant cities and things, and these ancient cultures which have their origins in a previous empire. So the idea that there are forgotten realms. So it's a forgotten realm, meaning there's no information on it because nobody knows. So you've got carte blanche to make up whatever you want. And therein lies the weakness of it and also the strength. As a creator, you can basically put anything that you want in there and say, well, that's a Mascari, you know. Netheril is a bit more recent, and so we have supplements by the writer, mostly the writer Slade, and we've got a very good idea of what Netheril was, its history, and where its ruins are located, and its, the origin of magical spells, and the way that their artifacts and their military and their abuse of other races and all that sort of stuff. That's very well documented. But in Mascar, not so much. And also there's other regions of even greater antiquity, such as around the Vilhon Reach is a devastated previous civilization that was flooded by the elves on purpose. And there was a psychic empire of humans or city-states called the Sword Cities and things like that. So there's incredibly rich history, but really you don't need to know all that stuff to play the Forgotten Realms. You can delve into it and say, well, there's this mysterious ruins. There's these ancient writings and things like that, and then the characters roll their Arcana check, and you just trot out some made up stuff, and you're fine. It leads them in the right direction. That's all you need to really know or use it for. Those of us who are really interested in like piecing together all of this history and stuff, really we're just doing it because that's what we really enjoy. It's not necessary to know that stuff to play in the Forgotten Realms. The sort of the project is to preserve and pass on this information because it's entertaining, it's interesting, it's story time, it's fairy tales for another world, but it's not necessarily vital to the gameplay of Forgotten Realms to know about all these different things. Like, I don't even use half of this stuff when I'm playing D&D. I don't use the Lord's Alliance or the Harpers or any of that sort of stuff. It just never comes up. Of course it was the elves, yeah. Kind of the elven thing. They do some really nasty stuff. And also there's a very, very strong streak of elven, like, extremist racists and on the world of Pharyn right now. In fact, if you get the... Where is it? I did a review of, not the Border Kingdoms, I think it was the Great Dale. And it talks about the Elven faction where they basically just want to wipe out all humans and return Pharyn to Elven control. Oh, Mark, that's a good question. Do I think there is a Shadowfell pantheon? Like a version of the Fey Court, say. Well, there could be an undead pantheon. You could say that Orcus might possibly be like one of the influencing things. I don't know. There's a potential to be, but I don't think there currently is. Moonring, I just got done saying that the Imaskari Empire is kind of mysterious for a reason. I don't know. I keep getting the feeling that somebody's going to release something on the Imaskari Empire as soon as I come up with a video on it that just like renders everything they've done void and useless. Thanks, Ruby. Ah, that's them. The Eldreth Veluthra are the elves in the realms that want humans gone. There you go. So yeah. Yeah, the Raven Queen's kind of in a nebulous position right now. Yeah, elven supremacists are definitely a thing. There's also an entire city transplanted from Athos to the Domains of Dread. The Domains of Dread are way outside of like the norm, though. Isn't Shah, Auril, and the Raven Queen all hanging out in the Shadowfell? Are they part of a connected pantheon, or is that chance? Yeah, I think it's more chance. I don't think they necessarily associate with each other. Particularly the Raven Queen. The Raven Queen's very mysterious and standoffish. She's the emo queen. The Raven Queen is the emo queen of the Shadowfell. The emo queen of the elves, which is extremely emo. What do bearded devils turn into when they get a promotion? I think they split into either the like the winged Malibranch or the ice devils. I'm not entirely sure. At some point, there's a diversification where they can split off into different specializations, so to speak. Like the horned devils, or the barbed devils are the ones that like guard, and they're all about, doing their duty. Thanks, Sanchgate. What are the bloodiest battles in Pharyn? Is there anything like our World War I bloody? Well, there was the cataclysm of the Netherall Empire. The Netherall Empire also engaged in a campaign of genocide against the Orcs. So that was pretty intense. What else? The Orcs versus everybody. The Giants and the Dragons. That was a genocidal warfare. There was the Tweegan Hordes, who poured out of the endless wastes into Narfell and Thay and Damara and Impeltur and all those areas there. And humans actually teamed up with orcs to fight them off. So, yeah. Raven Queen is a dick. Thanks, Miller. Your fantastic contribution to the conversations. That's a good topic, actually, Stanchgate. Worthy of study. Spike says the Raven Queen is the de facto ruler of the Shadowfell according to most 5th edition stuff, but there's very little on her. The Unseelie Court. Yeah, the Unseelie Court isn't necessarily Shadowfell either. Well, the orcs were... I don't think the orcs were really dead set on killing everybody in the world and getting rid of them. They were just interested in rampaging and proving their worth as warriors. And everybody that got in their way basically got cut down if they were, they were raiding and fighting and stuff, and then went back with war stories which elevated them in their culture. So they're a warrior raiding culture in and of themselves. But orcs outside of that culture don't necessarily have those traits. Can you make Jubilex remember? Yeah, possibly. Scro, Space Orcs. Yeah, they're I don't know. I don't know if it's tricky because orcs occupy different worlds throughout the multiverse. They're a transplanar creature race. They exist in different worlds. So they were brought to Pharyn through portals to other worlds. So those other worlds have access to spelljammers, and at some point the Scro took to space and became space orcs. So yeah. Yeah, the Odonti orcs are the worshippers of Eldath. That was the goddess of peace that I was mentioning in the video on Elysium. Yep, they're lawful good pacifists. Well, most of them were. They got captured by the Zentarum, unfortunately, apart from one tribe who was now protected. The Unseelie have their own place in the wilds and in the isolated places in the Feydark. Yeah. Yep, the orcs helped fight back the barbarian horde from Karatua. Well, the border between Karatua. The Endless Wastes is technically more Faerun, but it's around the Great Ice Sea. They're also held back quite a bit by giants. Space orcs, sorks, yeah. The Raven Queen isn't necessarily about good and evil. Where did goblins come from? They were invented for the game of Dungeons and Dragons. No, they came from folklore. Or you mean where did they come from? I don't know. They evolved somewhere. They made gods. the gods that were then attributed with creating them. It's the same with all of the D&D races. Oh yeah, World of Warcraft definitely stole everything from Dungeons and Dragons. John, that's a good question. Cold iron is kind of like a concept that was sort of invented for something that the Fae would be weak to, but really it's just like cast iron. So it doesn't, like, cold iron doesn't really exist. So it's a method of processing raw iron. You could say it's like meteoric iron that you just beat into, like, if there's naturally occurring iron somewhere, you could cold press it into items that the Seelie are essentially, the Fae are essentially allergic to. So it's like, I don't know, their uranium, whatever. Spawned from mud, yeah. When a daddy orc loves his mummy halfling. No. Hey, Bilbo Bacons, thank you. In D&D, there are established schools of magic available to mages. However, are those schools universal, or do they vary culture to culture? Ooh, that's a good question. For example, is evocation always the same between Fae and Arm? Yes, because they have their origin in the magic practices of Netheril. So previous empires that specialized in magic established those schools of magic. So the Nether Scrolls, for example, were information collected on all those different mystical ways that different nations and groups and tribes and species used magic, or created or managed to manifest change in reality without disrupting reality and damaging it or themselves. So the Saruk essentially investigated for generations all the different types of magic that were around. So the core of magic, and the core of magic use, is all of these weird practices that they don't really understand, but they work. So a lot of magic is just like built on a house of cards, which is established fact, but they don't really want to investigate the core reason of why it exists, sort of thing. Like, mages, for the most part, wouldn't appreciate you saying, well, if the gods don't exist, then neither does magic. Like, they'd be like, no. Like, we can call on other powers and primordial forces and the runes and things like that, are forces of nature, but the runes are just like from primordial beings that changed reality and created a symbol which persisted over time, which can be tapped for energy which exists beyond time and space. It's coming from outside the primaterial plane. So there's primal power coming from the lower planes, there's celestial power coming from the upper planes, and both of them have the ability to reshape reality without really drawing on the power of the primaterial plane, which is limited. Pig orcs or modern orcs? How about both? Do I have a favorite cryptid? Probably just the modern concept of aliens. Like, you know, tall whites and greys and reptilians and insectoids and stuff like that. I love that stuff. The Raven Queen just likes to eat carrion and poop on rooftops. If only it was that simple. Thanks, Moonring. Consider doing the video on the Daedric princes. No. Cold iron is steel and wrought iron is slag iron, or the iron found in iron kettles, skillets, etc. Is it? Oh, it's just like a little cardboard. It's just a printed out thingy that I've stuck on there with blue tack. Orcs come from goblins and elves working together to make them. That's a terrible idea. Again, John, not interested in talking about video games. Orc and gnomes hybrid called the Gnorks. Yeah. You didn't really march on Area 52. It was kind of ridiculous. Also, it was a really bad idea to congregate in that area of the world because there's no resources to feed and house everybody. Like if 50,000 people showed up to the middle of Nebraska, they'd be in deep shit. They'd run out of food. It's almost time for me to go, everyone. Thanks, Jimmy. The orcs aren't here for a good time. They're a long time. They're here for a good time. I like it. Cold iron is metal that isn't tempered to make an edge like when Smith makes a blade. So poured iron like fences and such is cold iron. Yeah, it's like cast iron cookware and things like that. Which makes sense, right? When you think about all of the body of folklore, the hedge wizardry of dealing with the Fae, what have you got? Salt, herbs, cutlery, cast iron cookware. It's stuff that peasants have and readily available to use to ward off the Fae, because what else have they got? They can't call on wizards. So it's stuff that normal peasant folk have got available to them. That's what they use. A ring of salt, some garlic in the window, some wolfsbane, that sort of thing. Have I heard about the cryptid, the knot deer? No, I haven't. Did a video game kill your family? No, I just have I have this thing where I sit down and start playing a video game and I understand the video game and then I become bored with it, and it's just like a repetitive exercise. If I want to do something repetitive and mentally engaging, I research stuff and make videos about it. So you should be thankful that I'm not a big video game player. I like No Man's Sky and Minecraft and what else? Card games, I play poker occasionally. Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is looking good, though. It is, yeah. Baldur's Gate 3 is pretty much the D&D video game of 2021 and 2022. You're playing Minecraft at the moment. I saw that somebody recreated the Lord of the Rings Middle-earth in Minecraft, and it took them something like 9 years. But imagine walking through Minas Tirith or Gondor and all those places. Awesome. Can you do an Elder Scrolls live stream? No. Mr. Rex might. He's a Bethesda game expert. The not a deer is like a deer, but not. It's an Appalachian folklore creature. Mm-hmm. Like the jackalope. What's another game that I like? Torchlight. I quite like Torchlight. And the original Diablo 2 was cool. I like procedurally generated hack and slash games that don't require a lot of thought. I also played NetHack for 360 games until I got the Amulet of Yendor legitimately. So I have the ability to persist at games where it's just me against the game. I don't generally play multiplayer games. I do like the Magic the Gathering arena card game, and I have been playing that. But again, I sort of get over it after a little while. I played Gwent, the card game, as well. I play on my phone a Warhammer 40k game that is extremely repetitive, and there's hardly anybody playing it, but I'm just basically base building. I like the repetitive act of base building. I hate it when somebody attacks me or I see something else going on. Diablo 2 was so good. So good. I wish they just made expansions to Diablo 2 forever. Haven't played Dwarf Fortress. Most modern games haven't really played those. All video games are based on roguelike stuff. Iron is star-killing metal. That's why it harms the Fae. Well, transuranic elements are really the ones that kill stars. Technically. Second-generation stars, anyway. You could say that First generation stars are killed by iron. Yeah. Second generation stars have got an accumulation of heavier elements. Try Hyper Rogue. It's a brain bender. First of all, don't pre-order games, but the Diablo 2 remaster sounds interesting. I could be into that. My epic gamer moves. That would be fall asleep and run off a cliff. That's my epic gamer move. I think the first time I played Skyrim, I went running out into the wilderness and got drop kicked by a giant. And I was like, well, that's unbalanced. Iron kills smaller stars like our sun. Not if I have anything to say about it. Wolf wears Fae, by the way. Yes. $3D Diablo 2? What sorcery is this? Yeah, Activision Blizzard definitely need to die. Like, they need the government to step in, break them up, and whenever any of those people try and get a job anywhere else, they need to basically be vetted. I mean, good grief. Anyway, ending on a positive note, I will be coming up with more videos soon. I've had lots of requests to do a video on the Cardinals, and so that's coming up next because the video on Elysium was extremely popular. Thank you very much, everybody who watched that. So Cardinals up next. I'm going to start delving into Mechanus as well, so that'll take me a while to research and bring various aspects to it, because Mechanus is very complicated. It's much, much more diverse than people think it is. And then, yeah, other Underdark races and Astral Realm races, and I've had a request to do the Yethak as well. That's coming up as well. So, yeah. Stay well, everybody. Take care of each other. Do Mind Flayers like dying? No. Yeah, Terry Pratchett had some great ideas. So, stay well, look after everybody around you. Be kind. And I'll catch you again very soon.